You're listening to Eddie Coric on 2country.net.
To continue the conversation, I asked him about his earliest musical memories, and specifically the early days of performing in public. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, my dad would take me around to different people's houses. By the time I was like 6 or 7, I could play a little bit of Chet Atkins stuff like "Windy and Warm," a couple of the really simple, stuff like that. Steel Guitar Rag.
Yep.
Yeah, I could play that on the guitar. It was pretty simple. So when I was 7, he would take me to these gigs. When we lived in Darrington, it was all loggers. You either cut trees down for a living, or you drove the log trucks to the mill, or you worked at the mill. So, all of our friends and all of my dad's friends were log truck drivers or loggers. And he would do private parties and weddings and stuff like that. And I remember we did one when I was, this is the earliest one that I can remember. I was 7, and I played those songs and just kind of sat there and watched what he was doing. But that was pretty much it.
Okay.
And then I think my mom hired me to replace her guitar player. He broke his ankle and couldn't do a gig. And I had learned all of their songs because I used to go to their practices, and I would just sit there and watch them. And I learned all of the songs. So when he broke his ankle and couldn't do that gig, I actually took his place and played. I was 10 years old. I remember that was in Pullman, Washington, and I got paid $10. That was my first paying gig. I was 10 years old. I got $10.
Well, as you said earlier, it really was inevitable that you were going to end up making music.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. My mom is a musician. She plays everything. I mean, she even has a didgeridoo and a pan drum and flugelhorn. But she plays guitar and piano and, all wind instruments. She's multi-talented, great singer. So I had that side of the family, plus my dad's side of the family. He was a writer and a great MC and frontman and, and a singer, country star back in the 50s. So, yeah, there was no question I was going to be a musician for a living.
And I next asked him about being on the road and the best and worst aspects of touring.
I love meeting new people. I love meeting new fans, making new friends, and playing with incredible musicians. Paul Rose and his band are backing me up on this tour, and Paul is a national treasure. I mean, he's one of the most amazing guitar players I've ever heard in my life, let alone one of the most amazing guitar players in the UK, and a great producer as well. But Paul is backing me up on this, and just being able to play with that caliber of band makes the whole thing worthwhile. The other thing that I really love seeing or doing is seeing old places. Like we went to a castle south of Newcastle a little bit. Whiston, I think, is where we were at. And, we don't have anything like that in the States. So just seeing old places is new to me. It's absolutely stunning. And I walked around downtown Newcastle yesterday because I didn't have anything going on. So that was really cool. I love that part of the business. The only real downside to it, first of all, is jet lag, because it takes me 3 days to get right after I fly over here. I don't know why that takes so long, and I have a little bit of a lack of sleep from that, and I miss my family. That's the other thing. I really miss my wife and my kids.
How old are your kids?
I have a 25-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old daughter, an 18-year-old daughter, and then 14-year-old twins, boy and girl twins.
Wow.
So, yeah, I have a lot of kids, and a 7-year-old granddaughter who lives up in Seattle with my 25-year-old daughter. And we just had another granddaughter. Cassandra just had a baby like 8 weeks ago. So, yeah, I miss my family. The other thing about playing on the road is if I've got my own gear, it's great. But if I have to use backline that I'm not familiar with, like every once in a while somebody will throw in an amplifier that just flat does not work with my sound, that makes it a little bit more difficult because I've got to take enough time. I at least need enough time to set it up and get familiar with the amp. And to get comfortable with the tone, I have a certain sound that I'm shooting for. It's a certain Nashville twangy, I call it speed twang type sound. It's a chicken picking tone, but no distortion. That's the problem. If you get an amp that has too much gain and it's not clean enough, then it doesn't work. And if you get one that's too clean, then that doesn't work either. I don't know.
Okay, Forrest, let's talk about the songs you like performing. What are those songs that you love performing the most, and why those songs?
Let's see. I love performing my dad's songs. My dad was a great songwriter, and there's several of his songs that I love to play, just because they're fun songs. They got a good groove to them. I love playing my own songs, obviously, because I wrote them, and they're part of me, and I love to see the reaction from the audience to something that I've written. And I love doing old George Jones songs and old Merle Haggard songs. I love classic country from the 50s and 60s. That's what I truly love playing, because I think those songs are timeless. I don't think that they'll ever go away. And it's just a lot of fun. They're not really all that difficult to play, but you get the right feel, and especially George Jones songs, because, you get to play with them vocally. I get to throw my voice around and really, really enjoy playing those songs. There's a couple of old George Jones songs particularly that I love playing, like White Lightning and Who Shot Sam, because my dad used to do those songs. And when I was a kid, watching my dad do those and how he changed the lyrics on them, and he did them as a medley. So I've kind of picked up on that, and I do them as a medley, and I kind of throw in a few of his little mannerisms in them, and that's fun. Oh, the other things I like doing, I love doing that old Moon Mullican tune, the Cherokee Boogie.
Okay, yeah.
Because everybody knows the Hey Ho Alina part. So, I can always get the audience involved. It's like, you got to help me sing this part, and then the whole audience will sing that whole part. That gets the crowd involved. Everybody's having a good time. And if I'm having a good time, I think it shows across the stage, and the audience will have a good time.
I have to say that was the case last Saturday night when you sang it. You got the people smiling and singing along.
Yep, exactly. If I'm having a good time and the audience is having a good time, then the club owner or the promoter's having a good time.
We've spoken a little bit about George Jones and Merle Haggard, but who would you name check as your musical influences?
Well, first and foremost, my dad. If it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be a guitar player because he taught me the first few chords. He bought my first guitar, all of that. And I just looked up to him. I idolized my father. And for that matter, there's several other guys that wouldn't be what they are without him. Like I say, the Buck Owens' first record, he was playing lead guitar for my dad. And then right after Buck Owens, my dad had Eddie Cochran playing guitar for him. And Eddie was only 14 years old when my dad had him, and he bought him that Gretsch guitar from Bell Gardens Music that Eddie played throughout his whole career. Summertime Blues, Come On Everybody, Sitting in the Balcony, all those great Eddie Cochran songs. My dad taught Eddie how to play with his pick and fingers, so he taught him how to hybrid pick. And this is like in 1954, before he was anything. So I would have to say that my dad was my biggest influence because he helped so many people out. He's number one. Number two would probably be my Uncle Gino, whom also my dad taught how to play guitar when he was 12 or 13. He's an amazing guitar player. Then probably Jerry Reed, because I love that Georgia Sunshine album when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And it still sticks with me today. Preacher and the Bear, Amos Moses, 8 More Miles to Louisville. Those are just such timeless classic songs. I can never get tired of listening to those. Albert Lee changed my life as a guitar player. The Beatles taught me how to sing harmony because I just sit there with the Beatles records and learn how to sing harmony. Eddie Van Halen took me in another direction completely on guitar. Led Zeppelin took me in another direction. Buck Owens, George Jones, Merle Haggard. How long do we have? Because I could probably talk for about 3 hours on influences.
It's certainly an eclectic mix, isn't it? Everything from heavy rock to, as you said, real traditional country.
From real traditional country to, classic rock and roll. Everly Brothers. I love the Everly Brothers stuff. All these really good harmony bands. That was another thing. The Louvin Brothers. People forget how great the Louvin Brothers were. If it wasn't for the Louvin Brothers, there wouldn't be an Emmylou Harris the way that she was, or Graham Parsons the way that he was. They really harken back to the Louvin Brothers harmony style.
What do you listen to now? What's on your iPod?
Well, I don't have an iPod. I'm a PC, not a Mac.
Okay.
No, on my Android, I have a pretty eclectic mix of songs. I have some stuff from a band that I was in, Mammoth Jack. Those are fun songs. I was in that band for a while, so I've got some of that. I have the whole Sgt. Pepper album on it, so I listen to that quite frequently, which is just brilliant. I love that record. Robin Ford. I listen to a lot of Robin Ford, guitar playing stuff.
We're talking blues, yeah?
Yeah, I love the blues. Robin Ford is kind of like he's a mixture between jazz and blues. His phrasing is just impeccable, though. Unbelievable. I listen to Marty Stewart's Tempted record quite often as well. I love Marty Stewart. I've been going back and listening to some of the stuff that I listened to in the early 90s. Ricky Lynn Gregg, who I've worked with several times over the last 3 or 4 years. I listened to his old record, The Mavericks. I've been listening to that stuff. George Dukas, Marty Stewart, David Ball,
My partner would be drooling about now, some of the names you just mentioned there.
They're all super nice guys, too. Yeah, I've got to meet most of those guys now, and I've worked with several of them, too. So
yeah, you just made her insanely jealous.